What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the workshop. Hope you're all doing well. Now in this video I'm going to be taking a look at some saw blades. So I went and ordered some new blades for my table saw and a new blade for my mitre saw. This is a set of 3 which is specifically designed for my particular table saw, or all these 10-inch or 254mm contractor saws. These are all Freud blades, and a good quality blade is probably one of the best upgrades you can make to either your mitre saw or your table saw. So what we do in this video is we'll take a look at all of these. We'll take a look at the different types that they are. We'll do a couple of test cuts with each blade and we'll compare them to the original blade that came with the saw, just to see what the improvement, or if there's any improvement in the quality of cut. And we'll do a cross cut and rip with each type of blade as well, that are not specifically designed to do, just to see what happens in that regard as well. So without further ado, we'll crack on and we'll look at some blades. Now, just before all the blade testing fun commences, I want to very quickly thank Tradeify for sponsoring today's video. Now, Tradeify is a complete job management platform designed for self-employed tradespeople. It's used by tradespeople all over the world, and I'm one of them. I'm a self-employed electrician, and it saves me countless hours and headaches every week with my office work. So if you're on the tools all day, you're in the trades and you struggle to keep on top of it, definitely check it out. It's all your administration in one place. It's desktop and mobile based, so you can carry your office with you in your pocket, iOS and Android, and it's everything from invoicing to quoting to scheduling work, managing a small crew through it, tying in with your accounting software at the end of the year. It saves so many headaches. You don't have to keep all that information in your head. It's nice, quick, easy to use, and it's very accessible as well. It's always in your pocket with you. So definitely check it out. There's a promo code MANINSHED that will give you 50% off for your first 3 months. All links will be in the description below. So remember, plumber, carpenter, electrician, painter, decorator, tiler, roofer, whatever. If you're in the trades, you struggle with that office work, I highly recommend you check this out. I use it, guys. It saves me so many headaches, so I don't mind recommending it to you guys. Now, on with the saw testing fun. All links to Tradeify below in the description. Okay, let's very quickly go through each of these blades. I'll show you what I got. Now, the first 3 blades are for my contractor, so my Bosch 10-inch saw, or the 254mm saw. I bought these as a set. They come as a set of 3 Freud blades. A 24 tooth, a 40 tooth and a 60 tooth. So a 24 tooth blade is, with larger gullets, is used for ripping. They're not great at cross cutting, but they're ideal for ripping. So fewer teeth means more efficiency in the cut. More teeth mean a much finer, cleaner cut. So you want to use fewer teeth for those long rips, because you need the large gullets and the efficiency of cut to remove that material, so you're not burning your timber as you're going through on those long rips. So a 24 tooth blade is ideal for ripping, and that's exactly what this blade is. Now, the nice thing about these Freud blades too is you have this backward facing tooth. Now, there's no carbide on the backward facing tooth. This is an anti-kickback tooth. Supposedly it really does work. I'll just show you in contrast to the blade that came with the saw. So again, this is a 24 tooth blade. This is also a 24 tooth blade. They're also ATB ground carbide teeth. I'll explain what that is now in a minute. You can see the large gullets on the rip blade, or the ripping blade. This is to remove all that material. It gives a much more efficient cut through those long rips. It's much easier, it's much faster, but not great for cross cutting. We'll get to that now in a minute. So that's the 24 tooth. This is my ripping blade. Then we have a 40 tooth blade. Now, not quite for cross-cutting, not quite for ripping. You can use a 40 tooth blade for doing finish rip cuts. You get a much cleaner cut. Again, it's not going to be as efficient moving through the material as the 24 tooth blade, but you will get a nice clean cut. Generally call these kind of combination blades. So you can do cross cuts and rips on them. If you're doing kind of more rough woodworking, maybe you wanted to just buy one blade to do everything, then maybe like a 40 tooth combination blade might be the blade to go with. But if you want really, if you're doing a lot of ripping of hardwoods or long rips, definitely get yourself a dedicated ripping blade, 24 tooth ripping blade. Maybe a combination blade is not the way to go, but like I said, if you're just doing general work and you just wanted one blade, then a combination blade is a good idea. Next up in the set then, this is the 60 tooth. So you can see we're getting a lot more teeth on this. Now, like I said, all these Freud blades have the little anti-kickback tooth facing in the backward direction as well. So now we're up into the 60 tooth. This is going to give us a much finer cut. It's not going to remove material as quickly, but it's far better for going across those wood fibers and giving us a nice fine finish on our crosscut. So we're going to do a rip and a crosscut with all of these blades and the original blade as well, just to see what actually happens. And then finally we have the mitre saw blade. This is a 305mm blade or a 12-inch blade, and this is for my large Bosch mitre saw. So we'll give this guy a test with the blade that's in it. It's old and needs to be sharpened, the blade that's in it. So I'll show you a new blade versus an old blade as well, and the difference in the quality of cut. So nice and simple. This one is a 72 tooth blade. Again, you're doing all cross cutting on your mitre saw, and you want a really nice fine finish coming off that mitre saw. So a really high tooth count for your mitre saw. So without further ado, I think we should do some test cuts. Let's do it. Actually, a little bit more about teeth before we do test cuts. Okay, so very quickly, just go through some of the information that you will see on a pack on a saw blade, just in case any of this stuff is confusing. Any of you guys are new to woodworking and you're wondering what saw blade I should get. Well, like I said, fewer teeth, more efficiency of cut for ripping. More teeth you have, the finer the cut. I suppose the more finished detail work you can do, especially on melamine and stuff like that. Now, you can see, so this is a 254mm diameter, so it's a 10-inch blade. We have a 2.6mm curve, so you can see the width of the carbide teeth there is 2.6mm, and the body of the blade is 1.8mm. That's what all these things mean. Then you'll have this measurement here, which is 30mm. That's the size of the arbor for your particular machine. So that will be written there, and there's the tooth count is there, and you can see this is designed for cutting wood. It's also an ATB tooth grind, so that's an alternating top bevel. I'll do a little bit about teeth grind now, just so you guys understand about that as well. So let's look at that. Okay, so there's a little bit on the tooth grind that you'll get on certain saw blades and what they're for. Now, all my saw blades are ATB, so essentially all that means it's alternating top bevel. So if you look down along that saw blade, you will see that the teeth are beveled left and right, so we have a sharp point left and right alternating all the way down along the blade. You will see it, that kind of sawtooth pattern if you look down along it. Essentially they cut like knives either side all the way on the blade. It gives you a super clean cut. It's great for cross cutting and things like MDF, melamine, plywood, all that stuff that you don't want to splinter out. Then the ATB blades are the best ones to go with. I'm not doing really long rips, so an ATB blade for my rip blade is going to be just fine for me. You can get a flat top grind like that, so all the teeth will be flat top like that. These are, when you look down along it, you're just going to see all of them in line and all flat top grinds. These are great for ripping. Again, they will be fewer teeth. They'll be like a 24 tooth blade. Long rips in hardwoods. If you're doing lots of that kind of work and you want a dedicated blade for doing that, then a flat top grind is good to go with. Then you have ATB. So that's essentially a combination between the two of these. So it's alternating top bevel with a raker. That's what the R stands for. So you'll have your knives alternating like that, and then every fifth blade or so will be a flat top just for cleaning out that cut. And there's other different ones as well. There's a triple chip grind, without getting too much into this, a TCG it'll be called. Now it'll either be written on the pack or you'll actually see a picture of the saw set what it actually is. So a triple chip grind just means the corners are cut off the flat top. Now it's usually alternating, so you'll have the corners removed, then you'll have a flat top tooth behind that, and then you will have one with the corners removed behind that again. So the idea being, again, for doing long rips or removing lots of materials, this is for heavy material removal. These corner removed ones will get in, scoop out a lot of material, and the tooth following up behind the flat top with the corners on it will give you, it will clean out that actual curve. So that's how that works. Again, it's for really efficient heavy material removal. So this is what I have. All my blades are ATB or alternating top bevel, and this gives you a super clean cut. Not as efficient for ripping as a flat top, but I don't do massive rips, so these are perfect for me. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to start with the blade that came with this saw, which is a 24 tooth ripping blade. So I'm going to rip a long length of oak. I'm going to mark which side is the top and which blade I used. So we'll rip this, we'll check the quality of our cut, how well it lines back up when we're done. And then I have smaller pieces of oak, which I'm going to do a cross cut with each blade. So each of these blades, now even though they're not designed for ripping and cross cutting, we're going to just see what happens. So one long rip and one short cross cut. Let's get on. First up is the Bosch 24 tooth. Okay, next up is the Freud 24 tooth. This is going to be my new dedicated rip blade. So we'll do a rip and a cross cut with this. Let's crack on. Okay, next up is the 40 tooth Freud blade. Now this is kind of your general purpose one, I suppose, so it should be good for ripping and good for cross cutting, but not great at either. So let's see what we get from this. Okay, last but not least, this is the 60 tooth Freud. Now this is going to be my dedicated cross-cutting blade, so it's not made for doing rips. Now I'm going to push this board through at the same feed rate as I did with all the others. It might burn the timber. If you're going to use a cross-cut blade for ripping, then a slower feed rate is what you should do. But I'm doing a test, so I'm going to feed this exactly the same as I did on my rip blades to see what happens. So let's do it. Okay, so straight away you could feel just how much harder it was to push that material through that long rip on that crosscut blade. So, not a good idea. Okay, so we've a rip and a crosscut done with all 4 blades. Now let's look at the results. I'll give you guys a close-up and see what you think. Okay, so first up we're going to look at the Bosch blade. This is the blade that comes with that saw. So it's a 24 tooth rip blade. This one is slightly worn, so it's not new by any stretch of imagination, but you get a good idea of the quality of the cut now. So if we start with the long rip on the piece of oak, if I feel it, it's not very smooth. Again, this blade needs to be sharpened or replaced. I've decided to replace it because I wanted a better quality blade. Now, another thing you will notice with these kind of standard blades that come with machines is they can chatter. You can get some vibration on them. So if I pull that cut together, hopefully you guys can see that. So you see the gaps every so often. So I'm trying to hold this together with 2 hands now. So I have closed here, gap here, closed here, gap here, closed here, gap here. So that's chatter, that's vibration on the blade, and some of the lesser quality blades can vibrate, and you can see that that's the kind of cut you're getting. So you're not getting a perfectly straight edge. Even if you were throwing this piece away, this edge here now is not perfectly straight. You can see that when you put the 2 pieces back together. So that's what you're looking at on a less expensive blade, and especially a blade that's getting done. They can vibrate and chatter, and you get that kind of closed open thing going along on a long rip. Now if we look at the cross cut, again, this blade is not designed to do cross cutting, and this is why you don't use a rip blade for cross cutting. Again, you can see gap here, so it's not a great end cut, and can you see the fraying off the end and the splintering, and it's all splintered along the back edge as well. So it doesn't give you a clean cut. So this is why you want a dedicated cross cut blade for your cross cuts, especially if you're doing some fine joinery and stuff and you want a super nice finish coming off your saw. Don't use a rip blade for that. and you can see that's not going back together. You guys can see that shadow gap there. Okay, so that was the Bosch blade. Now, let's move on to the Freud 24 tooth blade, and you're going to see a big difference here. So here's the top. This is the Freud 24 tooth, and if I put that back together, now you can't even see the line. You can't even see where that was cut anywhere on the camera there. Up and down it, if I keep it pushed together, you guys can see how nice a cut that is. So that's the difference. When you put the two pieces back together, the cut line absolutely disappears. So really nice cut, nice silky smooth finish on the actual inside of the cut itself. We have no fraying out of the bottom, which is nice. Now I should point out, if you want super clean cuts coming off your table saw and your miter saw, make a zero clearance insert for it. I've just used the standard inserts, which is very open either side of the blade, so the material is not too supported, but I wanted to do it just for this test. If I flip it over, you can see there's no fraying on the end, and that line closes up absolutely lovely there. So there we go, that's the difference. Now the crosscut on the Freud 24 tooth didn't actually do too bad a job, even though it's not designed for cross cutting. A little bit of gap either end. Now my mitre slate as well, or my mitre gauge for my my mitre fence for my Bosch saw is rubbish, so I'm not expecting super clean cuts off that mitre fence, but that's not too bad. There's not too much fraying. Again, I wouldn't use it for cross cutting, maybe for some rough cross cutting if you didn't mind about the finish you were trying to get. If you're just doing a bit of construction, then by all means you could get away with doing it, but if you're doing some nice finished work, then no. But it did a lot better than the Bosch, as you can see. Next up, we have the 40 tooth. So this is kind of our general purpose blade. This is kind of do a little bit of everything. If you guys just wanted one blade to get you going, then say a 42 blade is a good option because it can do a little bit of both. Now the feed rate I kept the same. This breezed through the material as well. It seemed to have no issue. It didn't stress the saw at all. It didn't slow down, and it felt nice and easy to push that oak through. So this is the 42 blade. So if we look at our rip, again, with the Freud blade, get these two pieces lined up. If I get them pulled together, you can't even see the line in that. So a really nice long rip on this oak. And I didn't use a feather board or anything, just pushed it through by hand. If you want to be super clinical, like I said, use a feather board, use a zero clearance insert. But for this test, we're just doing it by hand. You can see how nice a cut we got off the end of that. The inside of the cut, it's even smoother. So now we're moving up in teeth and we're getting a nice clean cut. No sign of any burn marks. Silky smooth along there. We've no tear out. If we flip it over and look at the bottom, there's absolutely no splintering or tear out, and it closes up lovely on the bottom as well. So it did a really nice job actually ripping that oak, that 40 tooth blade. So very nice indeed. The cross cut then, if we look at that, it did a really nice job on that as well. Those two pieces close up really nice. So we're starting to get into crosscut territory here now. So very little fraying, maybe a small bit of splintering on the bottom. Again, I would do all my cross cutting on my crosscut sled because it essentially acts as a zero clearance insert. But you can see a little bit of fraying along there, that's coming out on camera, but all in all, a nice cut. So like I said, the 42 is a great option for one blade to do everything, as long as you're not doing super long rips all the time. You're doing a little bit of everything and you just wanted one blade, and you will get pretty decent results with that. Now, last but not least, we're going to move on to our 60 tooth blade. This is a crosscut blade. Let's have a look at the rip cut. Now, first thing, like I said to you, I noticed with this is it was a lot harder to push this oak through on the rip cut. Again, because this cannot remove the material from as quickly enough with these small gullets. I kept the feed rate the same. I could feel the saw come under pressure. So you're pressuring your saw if you use a blade like this to do rips. You're also risk scorching the material, overheating the blade, and running into all sorts of problems. So it's not a good idea to use a 60 tooth for rips. Well, let's look at the finish. Again, it did a pretty nice job on that. I can see a small little gap here. Somewhere there, that's disappearing now. Maybe I can't see a small little gap. Okay, so we don't really have any gaps, do we? Maybe just a touch here. I can see it, just a hairline of a gap here. So again, working hard to push this through the saw, you can put discrepancies into the cut so it doesn't remove material as efficiently, so you're working a little bit harder. So the barest, I can see a hairline gap there just at that portion. So not as good as the other two for rips, and again, it's not designed for doing rips, but still better than the Bosch. And then we have our 60-tooth crosscut. Now this is where it really gets good. So if I line these up like that, now you can see that line has almost completely disappeared. If I get two pieces to line up, it should just about disappear. So really nice finish, silky, silky smooth across that end grain, and we have no fraying whatsoever or splitting of the oak, top, side or bottom. So that's the difference. If you want a really fine finish on your crosscut, get yourself a dedicated crosscut blade. That's what they're designed for. So there we go. Okay guys, so there we go. That was pretty clear, those results. You can see the lesser quality, albeit slightly worn blade, the type of cut and fit and finish you're getting off that. It's the blade that comes with your saw. So it really is worth investing in some good quality blades designed to do the specific cutting task that they're designed to do. You will get an excellent fit and finish straight off your saw, which is exactly what you want, and a really good quality of cut. And that's everything, especially when you're trying to be as accurate as you can possibly be. So it's worth spending a little few pound on a good quality blade. It's the best possible upgrade you can make for your saw. Now, let's crack on. We're going to do just a couple of handy cross cuts, nothing too spectacular with the mitre saw. I'm going to show you the old blade versus the new blade, the type of results that you will get. Let's do that. Okay, so onto the mitre saw. Now, this is the original Bosch blade that came with this mitre saw. Now, I bought this particular mitre saw second hand, and when I bought it, this blade had just been freshly sharpened. So it hadn't been used since it was sharpened, and I got absolutely exceptional results from it. So the blade that comes with the Bosch mitre saw, it's an actually really good quality blade, and it will take multiple resharpenings. One thing about slightly wider curved blades is you can get multiple sharpenings out of them. So the thinner the curve, the easier and finer the cut you'll have, but you won't be able to sharpen it as many times. Whereas a slightly wider curved blade, it's easier sharpened and you'll get multiple sharpenings out of it. And sharpening, depending on your use, maybe once a year for me, my blades might need to be sharpened. Now, if you're in a professional shop, it might be a lot more than that. But yeah, I get it a full year before a blade would have to be sharpened again. Now, this is starting to slightly splinter, and some of the cuts aren't as good coming off it. So it's time, I'm going to change it, upgrade it to the Freud blade, and see what kind of results I'm going to get with that. So let's do a quick cross cut on a piece of oak. I'll show you the results of this and the Freud blade. Let's have a look. Okay, a quick look at the results. Now, that Bosch blade is still giving some pretty excellent results, has to be said. It's a little bit harder to go through some materials. I'm finding it, you have to push the blade a little bit harder, but it still gives a really nice straight cut, so it closes back up lovely there. You can barely see the joint. Underneath, however, it is fraying. So I don't know if that's coming out on the camera there. You can see all the frayed edges along there, so it's a little bit rougher on the cut. Now, I could put a zero clearance insert into that. That would help with some of that, but it's just beginning to fray. Again, there's a lot of miles on that since it was last sharpened, but I'll just tell you, it's still giving some great quality cuts. I'm actually going to keep this blade for doing some more rougher cut work, maybe cutting 4x2s and that kind of stuff full of knots, and keep my Freud blade for the nice hardwood stuff. So here's the Freud blade. Again, brand new blade, absolutely exceptional cut. So they close up lovely. You guys can see that. No complaints there. I didn't expect anything less. And that feels absolutely silky smooth along the end grain. And we have almost no fraying out now. Oak can splinter like crazy, and we've got very little fraying on the end of that. So again, a zero clearance insert would help. A couple of little fibers there, but not nearly as much as this one here. So yeah, there is a big improvement in cut quality and the ease of cut as well. It just actually flew through that oak, no problem. So you can feel the difference with a new blade. But yeah, there's not going to be a massive difference between the Freud and the Bosch, because this is a really good quality Bosch blade. But so we're really just testing between an old kind of duller blade and the quality of a newer blade. So not a big marked difference as what we were doing on a table saw. Okay guys, so there we go, a video about saw blades. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, hopefully you have found it informative and you've got something out of it. You can really see the difference it makes on the table saw, having a dedicated ripping blade and a dedicated crosscut blade. And you can also see the usefulness, I suppose, of a hybrid blade or a combination blade as they're known. Now my advice would be to buy a dedicated ripping blade and a dedicated crosscut blade. You might not need a combination blade, but if you did just want one blade to do everything and you only want one blade and you're not too worried about being super clinical in those final cuts, then you do really get some lovely cuts off this combination blade. So one blade, I suppose, to rule them all, but my preference would be definitely a dedicated cross-cut blade for really fine cross-cutting and a dedicated ripping blade, because then you have the best of both worlds. But yeah, that's just my humble opinion, and you can see the difference between good quality blades and the less expensive blade. The difference in the cut is absolutely night and day, so it's a really worthy upgrade to either your table saw or your miter saw. So that's it guys, hopefully you've enjoyed it. Like I said, give the video a thumbs up, comments and questions below. As always, if you're new here, think about subscribing. So until the next video guys, take it easy, I shall see you then.